Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a kind of leadership that's so powerful, it's almost invisible. It's an ancient idea for sure, but it might just be the answer to a lot of modern problems. And it all starts with a pretty challenging question.
I mean, think about it. We're so used to seeing leaders on a stage, right? In the spotlight, with the loudest voice, taking all the credit. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if that whole picture is completely upside down, and the most effective leaders are the ones we barely know are even there? To really get this, we've got to look at an ancient framework for leadership. And let me tell you, it's a hierarchy that's probably going to flip what you think you know about being a good leader on its head. Okay, so let's start at the very bottom. Level 4, this is total collapse. This is the failed leader, the one who is despised. Think of a manager whose team is always complaining or actively sabotaging things. One step up. At level 3, you've got compliance. This is the authoritarian leader who is feared. Sure, people do what they're told, but they hate every minute of it and they'll do the bare minimum. Now, level 2 is where it gets tricky. This is the inspirational leader, the one who is loved. We admire them, we're motivated by them, but it can also create a dependency. What happens when they leave? But the very top, level 1, that's where it gets really interesting. The greatest leader isn't loved or feared. In fact, people barely even notice them. They're the invisible enabler.
So why are those lower-level, more destructive leaders so common? You see them everywhere, right? Well, it really all boils down to one single corrosive problem that's absolutely plaguing us today. That's it. It is that simple, and it's that devastating. When a leader, whether it's through micromanagement, fear, or just plain incompetence, destroys trust, the entire foundation just crumbles.
And listen, this isn't just some abstract idea. We see the fallout from this all the time. In the corporate world, just think about the Wells Fargo scandal. Immense pressure from the top forced employees to create millions of fake accounts, absolutely shattering customer trust. In politics, it's that endless cycle of broken promises that leads directly to people feeling cynical and not even bothering to vote. And it happens in our personal lives too. You know, that friend who always overpromises and underdelivers, it damages the relationship. The mechanism is exactly the same everywhere.
You know, it all comes back to this timeless truth. You just can't command loyalty. You can't demand it. Loyalty only grows in the soil of trust. And without that trust, everything eventually falls apart. Okay, so if the problem is a crisis of trust, what's the solution? Well, it's not some new flashy management fad or a complicated 10-point plan. It's a fundamental shift in how you see your role. It's about becoming an enabler, not a controller. The path of the enabler is really built on two core practices. First, they treasure their words. They speak rarely, but when they do, it's with purpose. They let their actions do the talking. And second, they empower, they don't control. They see their job as simple. Set a clear vision, get all the obstacles out of the team's way, and then step back.
And believe me, these principles work in the real world. Think about someone like Angela Merkel. She was famous for her quiet, decisive actions that helped stabilize major crises in the EU, all without loud speeches or grandstanding. Or take a look at Google's famous 20% time policy in its early days. Leadership didn't dictate every single project. Instead, they empowered their engineers with freedom and trust. And that 20%, that wasn't just a fun little perk. It was a gold mine of innovation. That trust, that empowerment, gave us world-changing products like Gmail and AdSense. It just goes to show you, when you give people real ownership, the results can be absolutely revolutionary. So what is the ultimate goal of this invisible leadership? What does it look like when an enabler truly succeeds? Well, the result is kind of magical. The sound of success, it isn't the leader's voice at all. It's the team's. Just let that sink in for a second. The ultimate win for a leader isn't hearing people say, "You did an amazing job." It's standing back and hearing the team look at what they've accomplished and say, with genuine pride, "We did this. We did this ourselves." The leader's ego is completely gone from the equation. That, right there, is the true sign of an enabler. And what's so cool is that this principle is universal. In parenting, it's about guiding your kids to solve their own problems so they become resilient adults.
In the startup world, you see it in companies like Canva. They don't tell you what to create. They just build incredible tools and then let their users' creativity run wild. Even in ecology, the best approach is to restore the basic conditions of a habitat and then let nature rebalance itself. You enable, and then you get out of the way.
Okay, so here's the most important part. This isn't just some dusty philosophy for ancient sages or CEOs of massive companies. It's a practical guide that literally anyone can use to become more effective. So let's break down how you can actually start walking this path. Here are 4 things you can try starting today. First, measure your own visibility. Seriously, if you're constantly putting out fires and being the hero, you're too visible. The goal is to build systems that run without you. Second, do a trust audit. Ask your team directly, do you have everything you need to succeed without me having to intervene? Third, practice strategic silence. In your very next meeting, make it a goal to speak last. You will be amazed at the smart, unbiased ideas that come out when you do. And finally, celebrate the collective wins. Make a conscious effort to shift your language from I to we.
And hey, if you need a bottom line, numbers don't lie kind of reason, here it is. This is not just feel-good management theory. Research consistently shows that companies with highly empowered teams, teams that feel trusted and have autonomy, report significantly higher profitability. We're talking over 20% higher in some cases. Trust isn't just a nice-to-have virtue, it's a massive competitive advantage.
So, if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this final metaphor. You've got the loud announcer who stands on stage and takes credit for the flower show. But then you have the invisible gardener. They're the one who actually makes it all possible. They tilled the soil, planted the seeds, provided the water, and then they stepped back and trusted the process of growth. The victory of the garden always belongs to the flowers, but it was only made possible by the gardener's quiet, steady, invisible work. So the choice is really yours. You can be seen, or you can be effective. You can be the announcer, or you can be the gardener. Which one will you choose to be?